Whether you're on day 1 or year 5 with your Helix, you no doubtedly, is that even a word? Whether you are on day 1 or year 5 with your Helix, you have no doubt wondered at some point how others are using it and the ways that they apply it, or maybe their best practices. So, here's my list. What's up, everybody? This is Steve Sterlacci. Thank you for checking out this video on best practices for the Line 6 Helix, my opinion. Before we start, go to the comments section. Let me know some of your best practices, some tips, tricks that you've learned along the way, either from me or from others that aren't mentioned in the video. And put them in the comments so others can, make it like a little forum thread. You can read, maybe learn something in the comments section that you don't see in the video. All right, let's start this off with something that's very important when it comes to making your sound. If you're not sure of something, try it. This is like it's such an easier said than done concept where I see people ask questions in, Facebook groups or forums and say, hey, is it okay if I do this? Yeah, it's always okay for you to do it. And if you're not sure of something, it's highly encouraged that you try it, because you might stumble onto something that no one else has thought of. And that's going to help you create your sound and get you where you want to go. You might have no clue what you're doing and just click random things. The Helix is not going to yell at you for doing something stupid. All right? It's not my wife. I have definitely been guilty of overthinking things and, thinking, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right way to go about making a signal change? Is this the right way to go about setting up this particular amp? And it's like you waste time looking this stuff up, and by the time you find your answers, you could have just found out yourself. Fiddle with the knobs, find your space, and do what sounds good to you. At the end of the day, that is always what's most important. If it sounds good to you, then it's good. End of story. I also feel the same way about practicing the guitar. It's like I spend so much time looking up knowledge and finding out what I need to know, what I need to learn, what's next, what do I need to know, what do I need to know, what do I need to know. And by the time I'm done searching for crap, I didn't even pick up my guitar and I didn't even practice it, and I didn't get better at what I already know. So I'm just thinking 10 steps ahead where I'm actually not even ready to take one step forward. You know what I mean? I'm sure you guys have related to that playing wise. And it drives me nuts, and I'm trying to get better about that. Back to hammering basics, experimenting and exploring basics before I go on to seek a ton of knowledge that I'm going to have no idea how to use. Same concept. Okay, basic gain structure. I touched on this in my mistakes to avoid with your Helix video, but let's just talk about it briefly here. The main gain structure that you need to worry about with your Helix to get the best sound is going to be at or above, like near or close to your bypass guitar signal. So when you first plug into your Helix, you're in your headphones, you're in your studio monitors, whatever you may be in. Once you I just play with nothing. Hear what that sounds like with nothing, totally direct in with just the guitar. Your volume when you're done making your amp and cabinet setup should be at or around that volume and not astronomically higher. One of the big things I always get when people ask me to help them with presets is that they're always way too loud and they're far, far above. It's not the worst thing in the world to be louder than the bypassed volume, but you can reach a point where you're gonna start getting some clipping because you're just overtaxing the Helix, and it's gonna give you that real fizzy, digital, like crushing, disgusting sound that you definitely want to avoid. The Helix will like to be in that bypassed volume area. High cuts. This is another thing. This is one of the first videos I ever made, was all about high cuts. Harsh reality of using this Helix is when you're playing with it live, when you're playing with it, you know what, in the studio it's not as bad as live, but once you're amplified through a bigger PA, I don't know if it has to do with how you dial in tones, maybe the Fletcher-Munson curve, where as it gets louder, the highs and lows are more enhanced, but whenever I plug in live, and everyone else that I've ever spoken to about it, once you plug in live, you need high cuts. So if you're finding that you're getting to a venue, plugging in, and it's suddenly too harsh for you, what I always suggest is going to your global settings, going to your high and low cuts in the global settings, and you just bring that high cut down until you get to where it sounds like it should. So if you're going XLR to front of house and they're saying, whoa, the high end's killing me, you can just go right to your global settings, bring down that high cut, and then that's one thing that you can just adjust per venue. I also get asked all the time, how do I adjust to certain venues? And that's pretty much all I need to do is adjust that high cut. Whatever it sounds best in the venue that day using the global high cut. Dual cabs plus an EQ block. So when you first get your Helix, people are going to tell you to rush and buy IRs, that they're the greatest thing ever. I highly encourage you as a best practice to learn how to use the stock cabs. If you use dual cabs, if you click on the little tab that says single or dual in HX Edit, or if you scroll to get dual cabs, using 2 cabinets plus an EQ block allows you to pick 2 different cabinets, 2 different microphones, and different placements of the microphones. Just really distance. We're hoping eventually to get axis placement, but for right now, all we have is distance. But you can really get flexible with what you want out of your cabinet section by learning the stock cabs. Sure, impulse responses are easier, and when you find the right one, they sound great. It's great to just drop in. I have some that I really like. I have ones that I drop in and use, but I've enjoyed the process of learning using the stock cabs much more than just plugging in an IR. Are you seriously not using snapshots? Snapshots are the one thing that set the Helix above and beyond for me, was the simplicity and the ease of use in getting snapshots, where I think of snapshots as a master rig. So you have your master rig, which is your preset, right? It's not a patch. Stop calling it patch, people. That's like a pet peeve of mine, calling it patch. I used to call it patch. It's not a patch. It's a preset. Get over it. Maybe I'm just annoying. I don't know. You have your overall preset, the big rig, your dream rig. Your snapshots are your presets within your master rig. I have raccoons outside my window screaming. I don't know if you're hearing them or not. Snapshots. They are your master rig and they're presets within your snapshot. Picture having like, that you see like the MIDI controllers, the big Bradshaw rigs, and the big famous rock stars just have the big thing of foot switches that controls which amp is on and which effects are on. And you put one button and a bunch of different things happen. That's what you have with snapshots. So if you just got your Helix and you're one of those people that's avoiding snapshots because you don't think you need them, you're making a huge mistake. Go and learn snapshots, learn how to use them. They're super, super easy to use, and stop tap dancing immediately. This one is a definite personal preference, and that's using your reverbs and delays. I guess it's the way I think of it is if you're looking for ambient sounds, so reverbs or like soft echoes in the background, more ambient stuff, and you're having a hard time dialing in reverbs, you want to put them in a parallel path, in my opinion. What that does is it allows 2 signals to pass through that you're going to mix yourself. So think of your signal being split now into 2 channels. You have your first channel, which is your dry signal with no wet effects on it. And then the separate signal, which is now your parallel path that you're just going to drag down, is now your wet affected signal. So you want that reverb to be super wet. You want the reverb to be super high mix. And it's going to sound really weird by itself or before you mix it. If you go to that mixer knob, you could bring down level B, which is now your split path. That bottom level is level B. You're going to bring down that volume, and that's going to allow you to mix in the effects exactly how you want it. I was watching Steve Lukather's Starlicks video where he talks about he's got something that does the exact same thing, except his probably costs a lot more money than the Helix alone. But it's just, he had a rack unit that he said you can control, you can pan the effects, you can choose the wetness of the effects, and that's literally what you have in your mixer tool. So you have a mixer right there that allows you to blend in how much dry signal, how much wet affected signal. It changed everything that I know about the reverbs in the Helix, made them so much more usable, made them sound better, made them feel better, and having that initial dry signal through really makes it feel better and feel like a more real amp. So explore parallel effects. I have a separate video on that somewhere as well if you want to go look for it on my channel. Okay. Possibly rag on me for this, but I have no freaking clue what the hell input impedance actually does or is supposed to do. But again, something I wasn't sure about, but I just went in and started exploring it. When my presets sound too harsh, or if I'm using a Telecaster with really bright pickups, like normally Tele or Strat, when you plug it in, it's going to be really bright anyway. If you adjust your input impedance, it's like an EQ that just like softens the highs and really sweetens up the sound. So I find with like a Telecaster, if I bring it down to 35, it sounds way better. I also find with higher numbers, it'll keep a little bit more sparkle to humbucking pickups. So if you have humbuckers, also mess with a little bit higher number. So I think the lower number, the more warm it gets, and the higher number, the more bright it gets. If you want to think of it almost as like, I guess like a treble preset or something. I'm totally making that up. That's not scientific at all. Totally made up Steve-ology thought. Do what you want with it. And you could just A/B this. Make a snapshot. Make a preset snapshot with just all the different input impedances and experiment with them and try different ones out. You'll be so surprised what a big difference this makes. And it's something that's been there all along that you've probably never even looked at, but makes a huge difference. Just experiment with it and try it. Go for your input impedance. Monitor yourself properly. This was another big one in my mistakes video. Monitoring yourself properly is going to make all the difference in the world. Can we please stop plugging the Helix into the Boss Katana amps? What is the deal with this? Like everybody that I see, I keep seeing stuff in the forums. It seems like every time someone gets it, like, oh, it sounds great through my Boss Katana, or it sounds like crap through my Boss Katana. Isn't the Boss Katana another modeling amp? So you're plugging a modeler into a modeling amp? I get so confused why people think that that's such a great idea. It's beyond me. I'm sure the Katana sounds great on its own, but I feel like it doesn't make sense to plug them into each other. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comments, whatever you do with that. But monitoring yourself properly is something that's going to make a huge difference, because if you're taking these presets live to a rehearsal, a studio, or a gig, you really want them to sound good. So you got to find a good set of studio cans or a good set of studio monitors that are going to give you the best representation of what your sound is going to be like for somebody else. For me, I use the Beyerdynamic DT770s. I got links in the description if you want to check them out. And I think that they give me a really good, accurate representation of what I sound like through a PA. But this is a brief tip. When you're done making your preset and you think that it's all good and polished, for the next few minutes or few seconds, crank up that headphone volume really loud and just see that you're not getting too spiky or too much high end, because that makes a big difference. Once you start cranking them up, you start getting the full experience like you would through a cranked up PA. So for the last 3 minutes that I make my preset, I just like to do a fine tuning check where I turn it up real loud and then I turn it right back down, because I don't want to do damage to my hearing, which you guys love to tell me about in the comments of my last video. Like I suggested to crank it up and keep it going for 20 minutes. No, do it for a minute or two, just to fine tune. That's it. Make sure that you set up your HX Edit and your Helix as a recording interface. I use the USB interface on this every day for all my videos, and I even use it in the studio, for real. I don't need to go through an XLR cable into an interface, which is going USB into the computer anyway. I don't need to. I actually much prefer it, because some of these things they add color, like different preamps and different interfaces add color, and I'd rather have what I know what it sounds like. I think it sounds great as it is. So I just use the USB interface direct in almost all the time. And what that allows you to do is allows you to record your full signal, and you can also take a dry signal from the USB and you can record where it's just your guitar sound and nothing else, just the electric guitar direct in, so that you can reamp it with something like Helix Native later. So if you haven't done so, make sure that you go and set up a recording interface using the USB, and obviously downloading HX Edit makes a world of difference when you're editing your presets. Let's take a moment to talk about your outputs. So general rule of thumb, again, I have another whole video on this one if you want to check it out, but your outputs to front of house, whether you should go to 1/4 inch or XLR, I always opt to go XLR to the house, and then I always go 1/4 inch to an FR or whatever I'm monitoring on stage that's going to be separate from my in-ear mix or my monitor mix. I like to have that stage volume just like a Line 6 power cab or something like that that's going to be on stage giving me my sound. When you're doing these outputs, it's very important to set your XLR to microphone level, and if you're going to a flat response speaker, then you want that to be set to line level. So a speaker wants a line level, a mixing board wants a microphone level, right? Simple as that, right? If you're plugging in a microphone, it's going to be a microphone level to the house, right? If you're miking up a guitar cabinet, that's a microphone level to the board. So the Helix operates the same exact way. You want that microphone level to go there. And then if you're using a speaker, you usually want that to be a line level. Speakers like line level. If you're going to set up your outputs, make sure you do that. So I've got a ton of different tips and tricks and all different types of stuff for the Helix on my channel below. So this best practice is to subscribe to said channel and take a look around, watch some videos, and hopefully learn something. Always feel free to reach out and ask questions. I'm always available and accessible to help you out. So that is my brief list of best practices for your Line 6 Helix. This maybe have a sequel one day, but for right now, this is the best practices that I came up with to show you guys. Let me know in the comments if I've missed anything. Let me know in the comments if you have any other suggestions for best practices with the Helix. Maybe you could help somebody out that you have a great tip for that I didn't touch on in the video. And as always, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.